Well, hello and welcome to NewsX VaKu. Joining me on the broadcast today is a very special guest, Mukesh Aghi, who is the President and CEO of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, which is amongst the most influential change-making business body, not-for-profit forum, which helps India and America come closer together when it comes to trade ties and economic relations. Welcome on the show, Mukesh. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Mukesh, my first question would be with regards to the operations that US-India Strategic Forum goes ahead and takes forward. And that's quite the humongous task that is embarked upon you, bringing about opportunities for citizens in India and citizens living in the United States for a changing geopolitical scenario that the world and especially US and India see. And how do you envisage at this point the future of the Indian diaspora and India's long-term growth prospects in relation to United States?
Well, you have to understand the two important relationships between the two countries in 21st centuries is India and the United States. Mm-hmm. And the question is, when you have democracies, they can be messy. So you need an institution which focuses on trying to drive an agenda which is beyond the terms of politicians and bureaucrats. And that's the reason we were launched to work on that, be an institution which is bipartisan and focus on and building a strong partnership between two countries, be it geopolitical, be it from a citizen to citizen, or on a technology area, or on a health vaccine arena itself. So we have a strong board made up of Fortune 500 companies, which focuses on ensuring that we are driving agenda which is a win-win for both countries.
Okay. I'll shift my focus to the geopolitical situations that the world is facing, especially United States and India. I'm talking about China. Now, how can American companies recalibrate themselves to the pivot to Asia policy and focus on investments in supply chains coming into India in view of the Chinese diktats and draconian regulations for operating inside the mainland? There are stories galore. Like only yesterday, there was, Kodak that had to remove one of those Instagram pictures that had been posted by one of the artists, which called Xinjiang and the Uyghur situation, the Orwellian dystopia. There have been issues when it comes to the Apple stores that have been operating out of mainland China. We are talking about Disney, a lot of these film production companies that have to follow the norms, the political norms of the Chinese Communist Party to ensure their survival and to ensure that they thrive in the mainland. Keeping in mind that's the world's largest population, so revenues also are a significant chunk to be reminded of. So how do we fight this policy versus capitalistic agendas that American companies at this point of time are in a conundrum of? And would there be a possibility of allowing for these supply chains and companies to come invest in India, keeping in mind the relationship is more fluid and it's a more liberal economy over here?
Well, China is a challenge for United States. China is a challenge for India. And it's a bigger challenge for India because India has a border of 3,000 kilometers. And it keeps on poking at India in every way it can, and especially in its partnership with Pakistan. So from a geopolitical perspective, there's an alignment between India and the United States as to how do you tackle the rise of China in a international rule of law and order itself. China does not believe in that. China does not want to abide by that. China wants to build its own new international order, which basically is more of a diktat from that perspective. So I think from that perspective, India and US are completely aligned. The challenge is that the current pandemic and abrasive nature of China has brought up a risk of global supply chain. A lot of companies set up their global manufacturing in China. Now they're saying that we need to de-risk that, and India becomes an opportunity from that perspective. And what we're saying is, as India opens up its economy, as India drives incentive program for these companies, especially in the PLI program, we're seeing more and more US companies coming into India setting up, or I would say de-risking their manufacturing from China. But this is a start of the process, but you have to understand there's a bigger issue. And the bigger issue is, for example, India supplies 40% of generics to the United States, but almost 70% of the API for generic drugs comes from China. How do you de-risk that? In the last 12 months, the cost of this API has gone up by 140%. Why? Because China is taking advantage of that. So I think there is a better alignment, better coordination, and we work both with the government of India and also with the US government to see how we de-risk that. And next week, we have Secretary Blinken coming in, and main focus will be a discussion on China itself.
And has there been any momentum that has been gained from your forum towards the Biden administration? Any sort of guidelines, any sort of communication, conversations in this regard?
We are working on almost on a daily basis on all these issues. We are feeding them our policy document. We are recommending partnerships itself. So that process it has gained a lot of momentum. They're working with us, and we strongly believe in the Quad. The economic benefit is tremendous, and both countries and all four countries should leverage that.
Absolutely. And we talk about vaccine diplomacy, and USISPF has played a very strategic role in the past few months in providing financial aid, procuring medical supplies during the wave 2 that hit India tremendously. There was also this concerted effort of bringing these multinationals, Fortune 500 companies together to ensure that there was medical supply, there was finances that were taken care of in India's time of need. If you could care to elaborate on how did you go about bringing about this magnanimous effort to ensure that India was provided for at the time of its need?
Well, you have to understand last year when US was in trouble with the COVID crisis, it is India which stepped up and opened up its border to export a lot of medicines to India. And as India went through its own challenges this year, it was time to pay back. It was time to reciprocate. And US companies stepped up and said, listen, we need to ensure that India gets what it needs. And I would say within a 4-week time frame, we were able to raise and export almost $100 million worth of supplies to India. As of today, I would say we have exported roughly around 33,000 oxygen concentrators, a massive amount of almost 270 tons of medical supplies and cryogenic oxygen tanks. I think it's not about just trying to give back. I think it's a true partnership. You have to understand, we have almost 5 million Indian Americans who are connected back to India. There was a lot of emotional attachment to the country of their birth itself. So they also stepped up itself. So I think you have to understand beyond the Quad, beyond the trade, you have a very strong emotional attachment by the Indian diaspora, which will step up when there's a need to ensure they can support the country of their birth also.
Okay. And finally, there are quite a few opportunities that the Western world is looking when it comes to investing in India, when it comes to ease of doing business in India. But what are the kind of deliberations that would be required in the ongoing policy reforms within our country that would help in further enabling foreign players to come into India and do business in a much smoother fashion?
Well, you have to understand companies such as Uber, Google, Amazon, they're all banned in China. India has opened the door. Yes, we have a way to go trying to make an equitable playing field for these players. We have a way to go to meet global standards in having transparency. But at least India has opened up its market. They are listening. They are listening to our policy suggestions. There are sometimes challenges, such as what happened with MasterCard or the e-commerce draft policy, which is coming in. But we are optimistic. We are hopeful that government of India will listen to our recommendations, suggestions, because we mean well for both sides of the border itself. And so the interest by US companies is tremendous. You can see year to year, during this crisis also, the FDI from US is up by 19%. And in my discussion with US companies, they see India as a market which they will keep on investing. But at the same time, it's important that Indian government, the policymaker, keep on opening up the market, keep on having transparency to ensure that there's a win-win partnership between the two countries itself.
Absolutely. On that note, thank you, Mukesh Aghi, for joining me on this very special conversation on NewsX VaKu. I wish to have you again and again on the broadcast with us to share your inputs, your analysis, and all that is happening with the Indian diaspora business community and the ties that continue to burgeoin between India and America and in the future as well.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.